Okay, hi. This is well, I'll allow Ori and Madeline to speak to you now. Hey, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ori.
I'm Madeline.
We're part of Juggernaut Glass, and we're here to make a very cool paperweight for everybody. We're kind of going to go about and show the different properties of molten glass, and you'll see us doing preparatory steps in actually, you know, before actually making the paperweight. A lot of times in glass, we really, we have initial steps to do before we work on the main piece.
So throughout this process, we'll be explaining, and if you have any questions or comments, your own stories, feel free to speak up, and we'll respond to those. And we will be moving the camera around a little bit to show different angles from the furnace or from the workbench, or from our different tools. So we'll start off by explaining what we have here. This is our mini dragon furnace. Inside, you can see that it's really hot. It's glowing right there. And that furnace is around 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it needs to be hot, so, well, that hot, because that's the melting temperature of the glass that we're working with. Inside of this box, it's a very insulated box that keeps the heat inside, and there is a ceramic bowl with molten glass inside. So what we're going to do to start off is grab one of our tools here. This is a metal pipe, and we use the metal pipe to pick up glass from inside the furnace. A lot of our tools are metal. We use, let's bring over to the bench for a second. So I'm currently sitting at our workbench, and we have railings. This allows us to roll the pipe as we're working on it. So we're going to bring over our pipe to demonstrate. So we'll roll this pipe here on a railing, and we use these different tools to shape, to move our glass, and to cut or tweeze, create constriction points. And these tools are also metal. The glass is going to stick to this rod, but it's not going to stick to our metal tools at the bench. And that's because before we get started and pick up glass, we have to get our pipe hot. So you see from your video that this is now glowing on the top here. There's this red heat at the end of the metal. So with that, we're going to be able to dip into the pot of glass.
Ah, here we go.
And now we can pull that out. Just a little bit of glass on the end there. And another one of our tools here, this is called a marber. It's a metal table where we can roll that glass. And it pulls off the surface, and it also shapes the glass on the end of our pipe. All right, so Ori's getting set up that will eventually become a large paperweight. But before we make the paperweight, we want to pull a stringer. This is going to be a small section of glass that we can apply to our paperweight later on. All right, so you saw that small gather before. I just went in with another rod and pulled out a larger chunk of glass. So I'm turning right now, because if I stop turning like honey, this glass is going to just drip down with gravity. But as I turn it, you can see that I flip it and it falls down, but every second it's cooling off and it starts falling less and less and less. until it's really not dripping that much anymore. So we only have a few seconds of working time before we have to actually go back into the furnace and reheat our glass so that we're able to tool it. So I'm going to come back over here, go to the furnace, soak that heat back up into my molten glass. So this furnace right here is one of the smallest furnaces in the world. It holds 15 pounds of glass. And there are other furnaces that are 100 times the size of this. Lori and I have worked on a furnace that holds 2,000 pounds of glass. So you can imagine how big that furnace might be. It can take up the entire wall here. And although it's the same temperature inside, there's so much more space that holds that temperature that when you open the door, a big wave of heat comes out. And so when people work on furnaces like that, sometimes they have to dress up in these very large reflective suits so that the heat doesn't burn them just from opening up the door. Yeah. All right, so over here we've got some colored specks. This is all crushed off glass. We call it grit. And so you can see we've got white, we've got green, we've got blue here. And because my glass is molten, it makes it sticky for other glass pieces. So I was able to just dip into this color and it sticks to the surface here. It's kind of like picking up sprinkles on an ice cream cone. I'm going to go back to the heat again and melt this down into the surface. Okay, so to make this a very opaque rod of color, I'm going to go back into this grit again, get another coat on the surface. There's my speckles back into the heat. All right, so Lori's going to prepare another rod of glass. So we decided instead of that becoming the paperweight immediately, we're actually going to create a post that will attach to my stringer or to my log of colored glass and we'll stretch it out into this stringer form. So you can see the way that the glass is changing shape. Now he's going to push it down to the table. Off now. We're working a lot with heat inputs, and it's not just to heat up our glass, but also to create different amounts of stress in the glass so we can break it and we want to create different sizes of our objects. So I'm going to come on over here, rolling on the sides. You might be able to see that the color changes a bit as I touch the table here. All right, getting an angle in the back onto the sides again. I'm also going to go straight up and down to create a flat point, and that will stick to Ori's post that we just made. All right, so here's my color setup. I'm going to get this really, really hot and gooey so that it will stretch out one long strand of colored glass. far?
I don't see any questions. I just wanted to tell everyone it's very loud in the studio. That's why it's hard to hear.
Yeah, if you can't understand it at any point in time, just let me know and I can repeat what I was saying. We're about ready here. All right, we're about ready. Rip it on here. And grab this from Ori. Here, Ori, you want to come grab this one? You know what we need to do? I'm going to grab this pad. Pull down this clear glass. It's a little bit hotter than the color. Part down a little bit too. Now I'm going to come over here. So this one is on the top. Here, Ori, back here again. Sometimes certain parts have more heat than others, and they'll stretch out faster. But this is good, because now we've got a few different sizes of stringers. Perfect. And there it goes, it breaks right off. On this point, I'm going to put my glass rod down over here. And now with a pair of tweezers, I come over here and give it a little tap, and it breaks apart. Okay. So although it's solid glass now, it's going to stay hot for a little while. So I'm just going to put it down on the table and get a look now, just a string, a strand of glass that we'll be able to draw our flower stems with later. Okay. All right, so as we get this next rod warmed up and start to take away, talk a little bit about glass. So, has anybody heard the concept of glass being a constant liquid? So, some people have said that because glass is considered a liquid, it's always moving. And that's why you might find old windows with thickness at the bottom of it, because it's sagging over time. But this is actually not entirely true. The reason you might find different thickness in old windows is because they're hand-made. They're made just like what we're doing right now. You will take the glass, blow it out into a bubble, spin it out into a flat glass that becomes cut into a window shape. And because it's handmade, you will have some differences depending on if there was a thick spot or a thin spot. But glass is not moving anymore once it becomes solid. What is interesting, however, is that it is considered a amorphous solid, and that the molecules are frozen in a random order, just like how liquid would be in its liquid state, or glass is in its liquid molecules are all random. They're not structural and like a straight order. So they'll be random. All right, we've got the heat here again. Okay, got my gather color here. I'm going to first roll on the marker just to squish some of that glass off of the back of the pipe. Any glass that stays on the metal pipe, we're not able to use it later. It becomes stuck, and we have to let it completely cool off and actually break from the surface. I'm going to come over to this bench here. We actually have two benches. I'm just going to take this tool. It's called a block. It's wooden. It's cherry wood. And kind of like our marker, I'm going to use this tool to give us some shape here. We'll be coming back to this tool later on when we finish the shape of our paperweight. All right, the next step will be to add some color to the surface. We're going to talk a little bit about our design.
So the design that we're going to be creating right now is a landscape. So we'll have green on the bottom half, blue on the top half, and then what we'll be doing is putting white clouds on the blue, and we'll be putting from the stringer that we pulled a stem, bunch of stems, and then a bunch of different wildflower colored print to make it look like a wildflower meadow with a blue sky. So the idea comes from wishing it was spring again. So we're going to make spring in glass.
All right, we've got some green on the outside here. Back into the heat. Maybe one more.
So that's the beautiful thing about glass, is that really we can pretty much make anything that our imagination wants. And that's why it's such a cool material. And so all this frit here, the different colors that we have, the way that they're colored is through other metals. So, for example, we have a green. That is copper that is actually coloring this glass. So the different materials that we have actually give us different colors. So, for example, a yellow is actually real gold that goes into the glass. And depending on what kind of color you want, you use different metals and infuse it with the clear glass.
All right, where do you want to get started with your stringer or your tie? So something you might be able to tell here is that when our glass gets hot, all those colors kind of mesh into one solid red color. And as it cools off, the color starts to change a bit. So it's hard to see what colors are on the surface until it really cools off. here at my bench for a little bit. As this cools up, we'll start to see those colors reemerge. And we're going to wait for Ori to get his glass nice and molten so that we can apply it to the surface here. This is going to become clouds. So within this step, you'll get to see cutting glass and applying glass onto another surface and twisting the molten glass into a different kind of swirly shape. So I've got my shears. I actually have two different sizes of shears here. These really little tips and these really big tips. And all our tools have different purposes for maybe cutting in different ways. This one is diamond shears. Tweezers. All right, you want to come from the front? This way?
Straight up and down.
Sure. Pouring just enough heat to get this applied onto the surface. Tapping down and pulling over. Let's end right about there. Figuring how to cut. I also have my tweezers here, so before it gets too cold, I'm going to give it a little twist. All right, and it already cooled off, so I'm going to get some more heat in there. So there's one of my clouds. Nice little twisty down. Or it's getting set up so that we can apply another cloud. I think we'll be able to fit 3 clouds onto this surface. 3.
You want to take one little?
Get a little bit of heat. Have it in glass. If I wanted to, I could get this hot enough to really smush this cloud down into the surface. But instead, I want to leave it raised. It adds some really nice visual texture. When we gather more glass on top of this, that space around the cloud will actually capture some air pockets. And so we'll have some bubbles inside of here. And bubbles inside of glass often look like little mirrors. So it's kind of whimsical. We'll play around with that a little bit. Corey's ready to bring over the next bit. Here we go. Straight up and down here. Quiet right. Here, it's kind of a low cloud. Up a little bit. See if we've got some time to wiggle this around a bit. All right. 2 clouds. our feet. For this last class, I'm just going to do a little strip right on the top here. Still curved. And something you might notice when Ori comes over with this next bit, it's shaped like a cone. And that shape allows it to stretch out just like we want it for these clouds, rather than having one big blob in one area. So we're paying a lot of attention to our shapes as well as the type of that we have inside of that cloud. Come on over, Ori. All right, we're going to come a little bit more angle here.
Okay.
Okay. There's our last cloud. I'm going to get some more feet into this one before I do it. All right, we've got our 3 clouds. They're all a little bit different from each other. They've got some different whimsical aspects. Okay, so we're going to use our stringer next. Or you want to, yep. This is small amount, it doesn't need to be a lot. Yep, come on over. So we're just going to bring this piece back. And I'm going to use this handheld torch here. Turn, stop right there. The tip is becoming molten. And with that heat, I can now draw onto the surface and pull away and melt it off. We'll do one more here. A little one of the same. Go ahead and go for a flat. So you can get extremely detailed with this. It's basically like drawing or painting onto the surface of the glass. There it is. All right. So next I'm going to draw a few little leaves coming off of the sides of those stems. We actually have a really fun tool here. We won't use it on this one because it's too small, but if you want to make really big leaves, inside of this tool it smushes down and creates a beautiful leaf texture. do, go back, right here. And let's push that down a little bit, Ori, with the knife. Nice. And let's do this one on the side. And push that down. And one more. Go right here. And push that down. Okay. Okay, next step here, we're gonna turn those stems into flowers. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of color from glass with grit, tweezers. Okay, go back to class. I need a different type of tweezers for this one. Grab some of these wide tweezers. Turn a little bit. This is try my fingers. How about that? No sprinkle on there. Nice. Okay, fine. Oh, turn to us on top. All right, here. Sprinkles. All right, go for a glass. All right, here. Yeah, it just kind of squeezes out, but I needed like a little speaker. Can you turn around? I just want to see what we've got left. So we've got one there. We need this one still. All right, go ahead for another class. There's really a lot of back and forth with glass blowing. We're constantly moving around. We need to be going to the bench to do some tooling. We need to go back to the furnace to gather some more heat. And this is just one style of glass working. This is called furnace work. But in this studio, we also have flame working, where we're going to be using a torch kind of like this one, except that it is connected to a table. And then we get to sit in a chair or stand there and make smaller scale work. That's how you might make jewelry or figurines. Something I really love to make is turtles. got some there. I think we're missing that one. All right, go ahead. A little bit more on this one. Wait. All right, turn. Stop. All right, turn. Got some on there. All right, looks like we're good. Okay. So what we could do is if we wanted to, we could just finish this off like this and have the color on the outside. But something that's really beautiful with glass is to add a surface coating of clear, and it really magnifies the image on the inside. So we're going to create basically an optical lens around our image to magnify what's going on the inside. So we're going to get a little bit of heat here and then come on out. We're going to let it cool off enough so that when we go back into the pot of molten glass, it doesn't strip away our color. All right. So this is what it looks like when it's hot. Very orange, very red, but really our colors here are greens and blues, whites. You just can't tell right now when it's hot like this. All right. So we're starting to see that color shift a little bit. It's getting darker. That's telling us that the surface here is becoming cool. And for just a second ago, this was a molten material that if we pinched it, it would have changed shape. If I now tap it, that's hard glass. That's not going anywhere. I can like poke this, that's not going to change shape. So that tells us that it's ready to add some glass onto the surface. So Ori, you want to take the next gather? A little bit larger now. You can open up the door. A little bit louder, a little bit hotter over here. Or he's going to dump that entire piece into the molten glass. It's completely covered. He's really working to get that glass over the entire surface here. And nice. Look at that. That's a lot of glass. Okay, he's going to go back over to the bench. And using one of those wooden blocks, he's going to smooth out the surface. Now he has to be gentle here, because if he pushes too hard, he can actually change the design underneath. That molten glass that we put on top, it's heating up our initial gather. It's heating up that design. And by pushing and moving that surface glass, it actually will change the shape of the glass underneath it as well. Okay. So maybe one more shaping on the outside. And then we have to do one of the most important steps here, which is to create a constriction point. The constriction point will allow us to separate our paperweight from the pipe that we're working on. Otherwise, it's just stuck there, and it ends up breaking in the end. So we're working that heat back in. Yeah, we're trying to get the heat back into the core of the glass. It was hard just a second ago, and it will take a little bit of time inside of the furnace for the heat from the outside to move into the very center of that glass core. We're going to get some more shaping on the outside, making this a nice rounded ornament or paperweight. block is made of cherry wood, so it actually smells really nice as it starts to burn like this. We use cherry wood so that it burns really slowly and it doesn't change the shape of the tool itself. Okay, so just one more move with the block. He's going to round out the very tip of the paperweight. Right now it's got sort of a flat spot from the gather. That's going to come around it. And then he'll go into the constriction point. In glasswork, in terms, we call that a jack line. And it's called a jack line because we use this tool. This tool is called the jacks. It's kind of like metal chopsticks that we can squeeze together. All right, one more move to round out the very tip of this. You can go in at an angle. There he goes. So touch the very surface there. One more. Inside of our furnace here, we have a pot of clear glass, but sometimes in some studios, including this one, we will actually fill that entire pot with colored glass. So when we pick it out, we might have blue that we can work with from the beginning, rather than rolling into the crushed up print. A little bit more. You might want to try the smaller one as well. So we have two different size blocks here. A large one and a smaller one. And Worry's been mostly using this large one because that's about the shape of the size of the paperweight. But this one, if you use this, it'll actually touch the very surface rather than the glass all sitting inside of it. This will touch the surface of it and act as a mold that will change just the outside of that shape. We use something very similar in the flame shop called a marble mold. But just touching the surface here, just rounding that off. Yeah, let's see if you can, maybe you can touch it with the back of the tool there. Nice. It's okay if it gets it a little bit off again from the sides, because you know that you can fix the sides. It's more just about being able to touch the very tip to round that part off. But at the same time, it's not always our goal to get a perfectly round paperweight. I'm going to bring over a little example here. These are some paperweights that we made the other day. We wanted to play around with some heart shapes. So these are some of the colors that we use today. This blue, and it's got speckles of white, and this red inside. And we started with the same sort of setup as this paperweight. We had the sphere, we then smushed it down into a flat shape and used our different tools to add this crease and then to stretch it into a point. table just like that. Later today, we're going to be playing around with things kind of like this, but making starfish. The possibilities are endless. Oh yeah? Okay, so here he goes. He's gonna grab these jacks. And right at the base of this piece, and it's at the point where it's after the metal pipe, he's using this tool to create a constriction. This is where the paperweight will separate from that pipe. And it'll become the flat part that sits on the table. So he doesn't want to get it too thin too fast, or else this will just move around a lot while it's cooling off. Because there's so much glass mass on the end here, we need to let it cool off slowly before we knock it off of the pipe. When we're completely done with this, we actually put it into a annealing oven. It's a little kiln that sits at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then slowly brings the glass down to room temperature. If the glass cools off too fast, it creates stress and it breaks. So the molecules on the inside, they stay hotter longer because they're not exposed to air. They're moving around really, really fast, and as outside cools off, those molecules are slowing down. And the difference between the slow molecules and the fast molecules creates that stress and potential breaking of the glass. Okay, so what Ori was just explaining to me is just our next process, our next steps that we're going through. We're going to let this cool down a little bit more, and then we're going to go back into the furnace just to add some heat from the very outside. As I explained before, the inside is still moving really fast, the outside is slowing down. So we go back, add a little bit more of that heat to the outside so that they're equal. And then we're going to make sure that the bottom of this is ready to be flattened. We want to make sure that we get it really flat and sit on the table. And we'll be ready to knock it off. So in preparation for knocking this off, I've got my torch. That will help me heat up the base that will then be flattened. I also have these grabber tools. They are insulated so that you won't have cold metal touching the hot glass. I use this kind of fabric material. And I'm also going to, so we're going to be knocking it off first onto a piece of fiber blanket. I have right here, another insulating material, and that will just bottom, flatten it on the table. And then Ori, where you at? All right, Ori says he's ready. You're gonna put some water on the next one, or what's not in?
I was thinking this bring, maybe bring me the knife.
Sure. One last squeeze with the jack to the bench, or you're making sure that that is where it wants to break off. Be a nice clean break there. I'm ready for the torch. Knife over here. Or you can also make sure that it's not so hot that when he sticks it down onto this fiber blanket here, the fiber doesn't get stuck onto the surface. So we don't actually want to wait to see some of that coolness come into the interior color that tells us that the outside is fully cooled off, not going to pick up any texture. Yeah, or use the get a torch, I don't know where it is. Aha. 2 torches, extra firepower. One thing that Ori can do right here is just give it a little tap with the knife. Let us know that it's nice and solid. There it is. All right, he's going to stick it down onto the fiber blanket. You can do that on the fiber blanket. Nice. A little score mark. And a tap. And there it goes. So with our torches, getting lots of heat built up into this base. We want to make sure that this is hot enough to then smush down into a sturdy, solid, flat base. What we're looking for here is that color change. You can start to see it already. The glass is turning orange. I was thinking to just put it down onto the table itself. Okay. So normally if something was thin, it would cool off really fast. And that would mean that we only have a few seconds from when we knock it off to when we have to get it into the kiln, or else it cools off so fast it's going to break. With this object, it's really hot because there's so much glass there. And it holds that heat. So we don't need to rush too much of this stage. It gives us that time to heat up the very base as much as is needed. It's molten and it's moving. And a little more focus on the very center now. That's where we really want to move. And in just a few more seconds. Ready? All right. Here we go. Give it a nice smush onto the table here. And there it is. Ta-da! And this is just a preview. See, we still see that the green looks pretty black because there's so much heat still in there. We're going to put this into the kiln, and then we'll get to see the true colors when it comes out tomorrow. Our first piece in the kiln for the day. And that just means we've got a lot of room to continue making things as long as there's glass in the furnace. So there it is. Thank you very much for watching. Are there any questions now?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Someone said, are those colors ground up glass, which I think you said yes. Right? The colors you used to dip it.
One more time that question.
The colors to dip it in, you said it was
The frit, you mean?
The frit.
This stuff?
Yep. So that's.
So what? Yeah, sorry, we didn't hear the question. What about that?
It's just ground up glass. Is that what you said?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, just ground up crushed bits of glass in different size coarseness.
Yeah, so you can kind of see with this one,
Sorry.
there's one larger piece, and then we've got some smaller little chunks here. And they're all slightly different sizes, but we can actually make different size frits just depending on how we sift it in the end. So we'll use a sifter and different sizes will come out. And we can have as fine as powder to color our glass. And we'll use them for different purposes. But most of the ones that we have here are these two sizes. We've got a medium and a small.
Can I have a question? You just spent an hour, 2 people to make that. How do we are they gone? Am I not on? Hello?
We're just getting closer to the sound.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you.
I said, you guys an hour doing what you did for one piece. Your patience was amazing. Now, how do we know when we go into a store that we're getting a hand-blown one versus a machine one? Can we tell?
Well, most paperweights that I know of, paperweights are typically handmade. It's not really something that there are factories out there that are producing lots of paperweights. If, though, you're looking for handmade blown cups, a really kind of fun secret thing that mostly glass blowers know to look for is a cunty mark. So at the bottom of the cup, we're just going to grab one for an example here. There will be a little knock-off point, and that is where we would have a temporary glass handle for opening up the cup. And it leaves this little mark on the bottom here. You see, there's like this.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
So something like that, that is an indicator that your piece was handmade. So you might be now going into your house, you might look at your own cups, see, are your wine glasses, are they handmade? You can tell if they've got a little mark on the bottom. And sometimes
Okay.
Yep. And you can use a torch just like we used with this paperweight. You can use a torch to polish it off a little bit. But yeah,
You would never, I never knew that it took this much. It's amazing what you just went through. Amazing. Love it.
yeah, whatever
Very
makes
interesting.
it takes a really long time. I made, I like to make these glass octopus, and one of them that I made took 13 hours to complete.
Ah,
So, very
unreal.
like, all the tentacles.
So much patience. Oh my God.
Then, of course, at any moment, something can go horribly wrong. So you could invest 13 hours in a piece, and in the 13th hour, it can break on you.
Yeah,
I could see that. How about passing it from each other to the pole and whoa, that was amazing. Wow. Thank you. This was really, really fun. Really interesting.
Thank you so much. So
Yeah.
the name of our studio is Juggernaut Glass. We're in Easthampton, Massachusetts. And if you ever want to place an order with us or would like to do this again, please reach out to us.
Great.
We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and if you need to get in touch with us in any way, shape, or form, just let us know, and we'll give you whatever information you like.
Now,
Our email.
you don't have a walk-in store, right? We'd have to order it ahead of time.
We do have a walk-in store in Easthampton,
do?
Massachusetts. We're at the Keystone Mill, which our address is on our website. It's 122 Pleasant Street
I know where that
in
is.
Easthampton.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we do. You'll want to call us before you come, just to make sure someone's here, because right now we're kind of like operating on appointment only kind of business. But very soon we'll have some business hours, hopefully, when things improve.
Great.
One last question.
Thank you so much.
One last
Sure.
question. Someone said, do you have something already cooled off with similar colors that they could see?
Yeah, so let's go take a look
Sure.
over here on our shelves.
Preview of our gallery here.
Yeah, so this is our
Oh, pretty, yeah. Wow.
made a bunch of
Beautiful.
for
Look at the
Valentine's themes.
oh,
Our
wow.
roses, our
Beautiful.
heart paperweights, some
Look
cups
at that. Oh,
and
that's
vases,
beautiful. Oh, love it.
and some pendants. So the pendants are actually a different style. So this is the flame working that I mentioned, where you have a torch at a table and you're melting glass rods. So it's small scale. But yeah, so this is another paperweight that's finished. This has the green,
Oh, look at
this
that.
has the red, this has
Wow.
the white. So this is a very different style. This one is more abstract. It was twisting. We just had the color on the inside. We pinched it, we cut it, we moved it around and swirled it up, and then added that color, that clear to the outside. So there's this one, and then over here, this one is also the red, green, and white. You can see there's some bubbles trapped in here, and there's some twists between the colors.
Beautiful. Mm.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
A lot of fun.
Thank you.
We loved your questions.
Good job.
And please let us know if you ever want to come in and have a personal tour of our gallery. We would love to have you.
Great. Thank you.
Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
All right. Thanks again, Madeline and Ori. Excellent job as always.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Great.
Thank you so much. And
All
thank you.
right, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Sponsored.
Thanks, Liz.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, thank you.
That was great. Yeah.
Luigi.